All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Thursday morning. And there's a bunch going on. The story's breaking now. SEC office has come out with the new rules on the tiebreaker. Friends, I hope you know about that. Matt Dean, John Hartwell, hopefully joining us here in just a minute. But the tiebreaker, we don't have divisions anymore, so it's going to be a fun scenario to play out this season. Hey, smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Do us all a favor. Tell your friends, families, neighbors, those people that you don't even know. If you're flying on a plane, hey, wheels up, Podcast City, and watch us at your leisure, live or whenever, okay? So we're going to be right back. Got a lot to talk about. Get pen and paper handy because it is Thursday's edition, August 22nd, believe it or not. We are 216 hours away from the start of big weekend number one, and we got games this Saturday in 48 hours. We'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne, Franz Beard here with you, and hopefully going to be, I'll tell you what, hell, let me do what's going on here. Let's see. Okay. There's a lot happening right now. And I'm telling you, Restream, I don't know what's going on with them. But anyway, friends, we're getting really close to the start of college football season. And the thing is that right now, and I had someone ask me this before the show, do you think the SEC will be stronger adding Texas and OU? And I replied, a lot, all caps, stronger. Yeah, it will be. And I think it's likely the SEC this year will put 4 to 6 teams into the college football playoff. That won't surprise me in the least. Friends, when you think about teams that are likely to teams that are likely to get into the playoffs, Missouri, simply because of their schedule, you'll hear. But I want to get into, and this horse has been beaten so many times, Florida's schedule. I think it's logo fever. Tuesday night at the Touchdown Club in Memphis, Cole Kubelik from SEC Network was on. And I talked about this yesterday. And if Brendan, I've got the sound bites if we can get to those at some point during the show, but they're really good. But Cole Kubelik said, what's everybody, going crazy about with Florida's schedule? He said, does anyone know what Miami's record was last year? And I raised my hand, 7-6. Does anyone know what UCF's record was last year? I said 6-7. He goes, that's right. He goes, doesn't mean that they're going to be that bad or anything this year, but I think people are really pushing the panic button. Now, Florida's in the midst of, like Auburn, 3 straight losing seasons. That hadn't happened at Auburn since 1948, 49, and 50. I don't think it's happened at Florida since the 1940s. Okay. The standard. Yeah. Okay. So the standard is really high. You look at Alabama, my goodness, from 1997, year one of Mike Dubose, to 2007, which was year one of Nick Saban, where he lost to ULM. Alabama had 8 of those 11 years where they lost 5 games or more. And then Nick Saban came along, and starting in year 2, they have been double-digit wins every year since then. friends, we're going to play, rapid fire. We'll get through this technical storm. Um, uh, and okay, all right. I think the problem is, and I want your thoughts on this. Fans make themselves feel powerful, thinking, well, he's got to go. But you can't keep firing coaches every 2 or 3 years. Look what that did to Tennessee's program after Phil Fulmer stepped down, okay, or was forced out, whatever. They went 14 years, but from 2008 when he was forced out, and they didn't have a double-digit win season then. They went from 2007 all the way to 2022 before they won 10 or more games. I don't advise it, friends. I'll hang up and listen, Coach. This is Jim Ed from down in Slap Out, Alabama. Go Gators.
Well, here's the thing that has to happen. You cannot have a carousel, for lack of a better term. That's what it is. You cannot have a carousel where it's just a revolving door, around and around and around you go, and it's the same old thing. Changing coaches every 4 years. Billy Napier, and I know this, I've talked to the people in charge, the people who write the checks, and forget everything else. It's the people who write the checks that are important. And they say he's good through 2025, which means that if he hasn't got it turned around by 2025, then he gets a nice buyout to not coach. Maybe he can go up to Lake Oconee and get a house by Dan Mullen, and they can both commiserate about how Florida was terrible to him, etc., yada, yada, yada. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Billy's going to win this year. The thing about it is, Rob, that we tend to overlook is you got to play who's on your schedule. And whether that's an easy one, a tough one, that matters not. You got to play whoever's on your schedule. For example, Georgia this year has got to go to Alabama. They got to go to Texas. They got to go to Ole Miss. They've never had a road schedule like that. They haven't beaten a top 10 team on the road in an S. And I'm talking about during the regular season. You get neutral site games, and once you get into the play, the SEC championship game and the playoffs, yeah, they've done that. But during the regular season, it's been since 2018 that they've won a game against a top 10 team on the road. This year they got to play 3 of them. Now I'm not saying that they're going to lose 3 games, but the potential for 3 losses is there that hasn't been there in the last several years, I would say. Now
let me stop you. That's a very salient point that you just made, friends. And Matt's going to join us here in a second, if we can get him. But that's a very salient point. How hard it is to win in a true road environment. And I'm going to throw one at you. LSU's got a hell of a history in college football. In 2019, they had to play a full 60 to escape by the skin of their teeth in Austin when they beat Texas. Remember that?
Yes, indeed.
And that was the first time in LSU's history they've ever beaten a top 10 opponent in a true road environment. I don't like to ever interrupt guests because you get the best stuff when you let them roll, but I wanted to throw that in there to back up what you said. I'm kind of like one of your assistants when we're in a trial. You might want to throw this in.
You need to do an Arnold Horshack.
Okay.
Oh,
okay. But carry on, my wayward friend.
But here's the thing is you got to play whoever's on your schedule. And there have been a lot of years when we thought that whoever was in the SEC office, had gone to Georgia, and they have been, because you look at how is it that it seems that every time they have to play a tough game against a top 10 opponent, it's in Athens. You tell me. I don't know how that works out, but just no matter what, you play the teams that are on your schedule, and it's up to you to get ready for your schedule. You cannot be making excuses and saying, "Oh, our schedule is so tough." Well, guess what? You play whoever you got to play. Um, FSU joined the ACC. Why? Because Bobby Bowden didn't think that FSU could beat Alabama, Auburn, and Florida every year, which is what he would have had to do.
Yeah.
And uh, he chose the ACC, which is why we call it the almost competitive conference. Florida opens up with Miami. Yes, you're right. He previously stated 7-6. Bunch of new transfers in, and everybody's all high on Miami. But I remember back in 2018, everybody thought Miami was going to be lights out. They opened up with Florida and down at the Citrus Bowl, and Florida beats them.
Wait a
So,
minute. Time out. Wasn't that LSU that beat them real bad in the beginning?
probably.
Yeah, because that 2018 was the first year Joe Brady was at LSU. And
Yeah.
remember, and people were picking LSU to go 4-8 or 5-7, and I think they won what 9 or 10 games in 2018.
They won. They won. If I'm not mistaken, they won 9 ball games in the regular season in 2018. I'll tell you in a second here. 2018 LSU won 9 of the regular season. Then they beat UCF 40-32 in the Fiasco Bowl out in Tempe, and that was the game that broke UCF's long win streak. UCF had gone unbeaten and so forth like that, and that was the game that beat them. And then the next year, they got Joe Brady in 2019.
No, he was there 18 and 19.
Was he?
Yeah. No, and again, he was like a 54.6% passer in 2018. 2019, he was 78.6. I mean, that was Joe Burrow, not Joe Brady. I always get them confused. But that's the thing. I'm going to throw back to Miami with you. Mario Cristobal, has he ever won a road game in an environment like he will face August 31st in the Swamp? I don't believe he has.
No, he hasn't. I mean, you can't count what he did at Oregon. I mean, let's face it. Joe Brady was 2019. He wasn't there at 18. He was with the Saints in 2018. By the way, I just checked.
No, I meant Joe Burrow. Yeah, Joe Burrow was at LSU in 18 and 19.
Yeah, Joe Burrow was. Joe Brady came along in 2019.
Correct.
And changed the entire dynamic there.
Yeah. Sorry, my apologies.
But what I'm saying is this, is you got to play who you got to play. Miami's going to have to open with Florida, and then they probably don't have another difficult ball game until they play FSU. I think they're going to lose 2 ball games this year. I think they're going to win 10 ball games. And I think everybody's going to be looking at them as one of these teams whose record is better than they really are. Again, though, you play who you play. You beat who you got to beat. And if you beat enough teams, then now that we have this new format for the playoffs, 12 teams, there's going to be a lot of 10-2 teams that get in. And that's the thing. I think the SEC gets 4 in. I think they're going to get – I think Georgia's getting in. I think Texas is getting in. I think Alabama's getting in. And I think Ole Miss is getting in. I don't think Missouri's getting in. Just my guess on my part. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're another team that's going to be 10-2, and they're going to have a great offense. And they're going to have a lousy defense, and everybody's going to think, boy, they got shafted because they did not get into the playoff. But so be it. I think you're going to get 4 from the SEC, 3 from the Big Ten. I think you get 2 teams from the almost competitive conference right now.
Okay. Now, the ACC is going to be – there's a lot of good teams. I don't know who the great team is. Florida State with DJ. No. I don't see it this year, but if you look at the climb at Florida State, 3-9, and then the virus. Well, the virus year, the first year was like 3-6 or something. It was horrible. Next year, rough. And then in 22, they go 10-3, but that 1 point win on the road in New Orleans against LSU at the beginning. Last year, they killed LSU at the beginning of the season, went undefeated, but they were kept out of the playoffs because the perception nationally is that, or was, that the ACC was not that strong. I still think, friends, if you look at regular season matchups, SEC versus ACC teams, I think it's about 500. It's probably a jump ball. I don't think there's that big of a difference in the regular season. Now, top teams, Georgia, Ole Miss, Bama, Missouri, Texas, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Auburn. Wow. I mean, yeah, it's not that good in the ACC. But then I look at the Big 12. I want to throw something at you. Deion Sanders, he's got one or two coaches still on the staff that were there with him when he came to Colorado a year ago. They lost their special teams coach yesterday, less than 2 weeks before the opener. That's not a good sign. The canary in the coal mine is chirping loudly in Boulder. I mean, the over-under, I think it's like 5-7. I just want to know who Colorado's going to beat. I mean, that looks like a mess comparable to inviting people out to the Titanic for happy hour. That's a mess. And I look at them coming in the Big 12. I think the Big 12, I think Kansas State's good. There's a lot of good teams around there, friends. What I like the most about
Utah could win the national championship.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Utah's probably the best team out there. And but I heard this discussed on Chuck Oliver's show yesterday. What's going to happen to BYU? I mean, man, they all of a sudden, it's one thing to be 12-1, 13-0, whatever, because you're playing teams that you've out recruited every year. Who in the Big 12 is BYU out recruiting in spite of having a bunch of older guys that have done their 2-year Mormon mission? Let's get back to the SEC. Let's switch over here. Texas A&M. That's the mystery that no one seems to crack the code on. All the money in the world, as you say, friends, only God and the Longhorns have more money than the Aggies.
That's true.
In spite of having all that money, they've had in this millennium one double-digit win season. And you've got to shake your head and go, what's the problem? Is it it's people, obviously. It's poor coaching hires, but it ain't because of a lack of fan support. The Aggie fans, I mean, let's be completely transparent, are incredibly loyal. But I don't think the people, Ross Bjork, this is the thing about America. I guess you could say it's great. A guy like Ross Bjork, who signed Jimbo up and strapped Texas A&M with that $75 million ball and chain, he's now the AD at Ohio State. What a country.
Well, there's old athletic directors never die. They just get a new job someplace else. You look at this. Ross Bjork now has to go at Ohio State, where they have 36 sports. We have 21 at most, 19 to 21 at most SEC schools. I'm not so sure. I don't know that what they've done is an improvement. Bringing in Elko, I don't know if it's any much of an improvement over Jimbo. I think certain places just aren't conducive. They've had all this money all these years. Here's the thing, Rob. Texas A&M has always had this much money.
Exactly.
They've always had this kind of fan support. Let's face it. I mean, they did a complete rebuild of their stadium in 2 years, which is unheard of. And they did it all paid for in cash up front. Now, the only people I have ever known who do something like that were the people at North Carolina when they wanted to build the Dean Dome. They raised the money in 3 weeks. to build it. So, which isn't bad, but they've always had that money, and
Yeah.
yet how many how many national championships have they won?
The
You know how
last one
many?
was 1939.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So here,
And
next question.
that one they shouldn't have won because the best team in the country was General Bob Neyland and the boys at Tennessee. I don't think they were scored on in the regular season
But
in
they
30.
lost to Southern Cal in the Rose Bowl that year. Remember?
Yep, 7 to
I mean,
nothing.
you were not around then. Neither was I. But my dad was. He was
I
a
mean, I
young
know I'm
boy.
old, but you don't have to
No,
rub it in.
my
You know,
dad
it's
was
my
11 years
birthday.
old at that game. He probably listened to it on the radio. Hey, friends, I got to ask you a couple of quick questions. There's a lot of people that think when the SEC does the next round of expansion, okay, put things in perspective, it'll happen because it's always happened. North Carolina and Virginia, I don't see it happening. Too small of campuses, too small alumni bases, and too small of stadiums. And is North Carolina more women than men at that school?
No, North Carolina Greensboro is.
Okay.
UNC Greensboro is a single man's playground. I mean, goodness, there was a time back when I was a sports editor of a newspaper in eastern North Carolina, and you'd come to Greensboro for the ACC tournament or what they had something called the Big Four tournament at the time or whatever like that. And you just call up a dorm. You look at the dorms up there and say, "Hey, I'm so and so. I need a date tonight. We're going to Habel's Hearth to eat, and it'd really be helpful. She's good looking. Be there at 9 or 8. And you show up, and there she is. You never. I mean, it was a wonderful place, and it still is by all means. But Carolina, the UNC campus in Chapel Hill, um, the girls are much better looking than they are at Duke. If at Duke, if you wanted to date a girl from Duke, you could get a girl with brains, but beauty is maybe not.
Well,
Uh,
here's another one. UVA. I've been to Chapel Hill. I've been to Charlottesville many times. I just think that their fan bases. I've been to games at both campuses when Auburn played them, and the snobbery, just the
oh,
disdain.
come
Oh,
on.
it was like
'Cause
we were laughing. We were like going, God, what a bunch of just buffoons. I mean, especially in Charlottesville. Now, I've got all my family up there, went to Virginia Tech, and brother-in-law played football at Virginia Tech. But I mean, seriously, who the hell do these people think they are? And I don't see they would not fit into the SEC. I
But
don't care.
that, but if the SEC expands, those will be the two teams that will be joining, and here's
Ugh,
what. And here's why.
ugh.
Because you're talking about TV footprint.
I
Forget
know that, but I don't
forget the
hate either
state.
one of those schools. But they're basketball schools, and
It's not just basketball, and the SEC will look at it like that. Carolina this year Florida finished fourth, I think it was in the Directors' Cup, or fifth, I think it was, and Carolina finished right behind Florida. They finish there every year. Virginia's won a national championship in basketball. They won one in baseball. They've
yeah,
won. Their swimming program is top notch.
and they
Um,
are. No, they're good. It's just
and
I
and
just talk
that's
about the fans.
and the thing about it is the SEC will look at that, but the big thing the SEC is going to look at is this: who brings the most people to the TV set. This is why Florida State and Clemson aren't going to make it, because the SEC already owns Florida because of the University of Florida. The SEC already owns South Carolina because of the University of South Carolina, not because of Clemson. Those two schools, they're not going to really add to the base there. Why do you think FSU and Clemson are backing off of their lawsuit? They could have, but they backed off. They signed up again with the SEC with the ACC.
Yeah, let me enter. Yeah, when I put the finger up here, because you're making so many great points, Franz. Like you have so much great content coming out of your noodle. I have to stop you because I'm like going, holy shnikes, Tommy boy. All right, I agree with you. Cole Kubelik talked about that ACC lawsuit. Okay, Florida State coming to the SEC, Clemson coming to the SEC. I'll say it like I've said it a million times before. That's like bringing sand to the beach. We've already got that market, and we've already got South Carolina in the SEC. Now, I've got a lot of friends that went to, Virginia, and I know people that went to North Carolina too. I'm just saying they need to get their stadiums bigger. Football better matter. We don't need to bring in more Vanderbilts. And I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen with this House lawsuit. I think what is going to happen, and a lot of my family went to Vanderbilt. My grandfather and his brother both went to law school there after VMI. My cousin Helen, a lot of great people. And they're just as frustrated as anybody, more so than us. But I see the revenue as we go to 60, 80, and eventually 100 million, France, as you've talked about a number of times on this show. I'm not going to be surprised if there isn't like means testing and they say, okay, football is paying for just about everything. The bulk of this big revenue is football. And Vanderbilt, their athletic department, whatever it is, they don't even have an AD, whatever they call it. They changed it to intramurals, either put out or get out. And they're putting a lot of money into the football stadium and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to – I mean, Clark Lee didn't lose his mind overnight, but they're 2-22 in the SEC in his first 3 years. He went to NBA. He played at Vanderbilt. Barton Simmons and him went to NBA together, home of the Gentlemen Scholars. But he's mad as hell. You know he is. He can't say it. I rode on the elevator with him at Media Days. I didn't even talk to him. Because it's like going out there and trying to sell life insurance to somebody who's on death row. I mean, it's frustrating because they've got a lot of alumni. They've got a lot of money. I hear they've got 35 or 40 big donors up there, but they go to the same people over and over and over. And you talk about your donor base. I like, hey, we brought it up yesterday. One of our guests yesterday made a point about, Dave Tompkins, one of our regulars on the roundtable. Why not Nebraska into the SEC? Of course, they left the Big 12 because they were tired of Texas. But Nebraska would fit the footprint, although it's not a contiguous state. It doesn't connect a state that's a member of the Southeastern Conference. That's the worst. Wait a minute. Does Nebraska touch Missouri at some point? I'm not looking at my map.
No.
Hey,
Nebraska doesn't touch anything. Nebraska is all,
I know
closest to Mars than
it is. But the fan bases that are more like the SEC fans. I mean, who do you? West Virginia. I like this from Buck Wade. I almost said Buck Rogers. We got a regular Buck Rogers movie going on here.
See,
friends,
here's
I like
the
fan
thing.
bases like us.
Let me say one thing. There is no, Greg Sankey is happy with 16 and wants to stay at 16. If expansion is more or less forced upon him, he has a contingency plan. But he has the perfect scenario with 16 teams because he has the greatest scheduling situation that you can imagine.
All right. Time out here. We're having a lot of issues today. Gary Harris is trying to join us from Tuscaloosa. Tide 100.9 WVUA. TV 23 does a great show, Franz, Tuesday nights with Rodney Orr called Tider Insider TV. Franz, we're going to go back to what you said later, but Gary, Had a wild technical morning, a tsunami of technical issues this morning. Thanks for joining us. Hey, man, 216 hours away from the debut of Kalen DeBoer against Western Kentucky. What's happening in practice? I know you have some access, but not like it used to be.
All right, so you got me, Rob. I'm on. You can hear me.
I can
Okay,
hear you. You're kind of moving in slow motion.
Yeah, I can't see myself, but that's okay. I'll answer the question. Yeah, I think fall camp went terrific. Everything that I was able to gather, it was a very, very protective fall camp. This past Saturday scrimmage, in fact, I haven't heard this very often, even going back to when Saban first got here, that some of the coaches were concerned that it was too physical. If you don't hear that too often when it comes to football, even by today's standards, but evidently they got after it. And, luckily no one got hurt, but I was told by a couple of people in the building that the training staff and some of the strength and conditioning coaches were fit to be tied with how physical that scrimmage was. But, it's still football. It's still tackle football. So I think most fans that have heard that, because it's making the rounds, are pretty happy to hear that, because I think the feeling all through fall camp was that this offense is going to be explosive and dynamic, and the defense is going to kind of be playing catch up. But in that scrimmage on Saturday, everything that I could gather, I didn't get to see it obviously, but talking with people, was that the defense had got the better of it. So I think that's good news, because I really feel confident this offense with Milroe at quarterback, the running back room. I think the offensive line is going to be solid. I think the wide receivers, you don't know a lot of their names, but I think you will. And so I think the offense is going to be hitting full stride from game one. Defensively, with a completely new system, questions in the secondary, questions at edge rusher. That's where I think a little bit of the anxiety was, built around this team, was on defense. But lately it sounds like the defense has done really well. I think this is a good team. I mean, I think so much is being made of the fact that Saban retired and some guys got in the portal, but you don't stack recruiting classes one on top of the other and not have talent. I mean, this is a talented roster still. And I've said it on my show, and people call in and say, well, you got to give DeBoer some time, and that's not very realistic. I mean, if they're not in the playoff, in a 12-team playoff, it's going to be fit, people be fit to be tied. So I think Alabama's a playoff team. They've been able to get in the playoff most years when it was 4. So if they're not in it, guys, when it's 12, there'll be some gnashing of teeth around here. But I think Alabama will be I think there'll be 4 SEC teams in the playoff, and I think Alabama will be one of them.
Yeah.
104 and 12 is Kalen DeBoer's record as a college football coach. There's an old saying that winners win, and they win no matter where they are.
Yeah.
And he's the perfect example. He won an NAIA with 67-3 there, wins at Fresno, wins at Washington. He wins wherever he goes. His offenses are good wherever he goes. He may have been the single perfect hire you could have had to follow a legend. I mean, I'm just being realistic about it. And I mean, I'm from a place where we follow legends with, we followed one with Ron Zook. We followed another one with Will Muschamp. So, I mean, I know a little bit of something about how you can screw up following a legend.
Yeah. And you know what, Gary, I got to say something funny to you. You know Kirk McNair.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. We had him on the show. We did a SECU. We do these little specialty podcasts sometimes. Mm-hmm. Buddy Martin, Kirk McNair, Monday after the show. And it's up on our site if you go there, just about remembering the years through the lenses and the eyes of the writers. Kirk, he told this funny story. And Kirk is just, as Buddy said, he's like a 40-year-old kid. I mean, he's just amazing. He goes, I was working for Coach Bryant, and we back in the day, the practices and the scrimmages were all wide open. And we had a particularly bad practice on a Thursday, and I had to meet every day with Coach Bryant. Every day. I looked forward to it. It was the greatest job in the world those 9 years. Coach Bryant came up to me after that practice and said, nobody is allowed to come watch this scrimmage Saturday. He goes, so I had to go back and call all the writers individually. There were no emails or texts or blasts or social media. I had to call them all. Don't come. So we had the scrimmage Saturday, and afterwards, after the scrimmage, Coach Bryant walked down and stood there and raised his hands and said, "Where are all the writers?" He goes, "Well, Coach, you told me that nobody was invited to the scrimmage, and I told them they couldn't come." Well, they're our friends. I think that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard, Gary.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And how many coaches would say that the writers are their friends these days? I mean,
yeah.
How many? Well, let me correct that. How many writers are out there for coaches to say they're our friends?
Yeah,
there's a lot of people out there who have the title but can't do it.
I think that's the best way to phrase it. There's people that have access, and Rob and I have talked about this, and you guys know what I'm talking about. And it's not resentment; it's just the fact you're great. You came up through the ranks as a writer, and I came up through the ranks as a broadcaster. And you had to learn your skills. You had to learn how to do it. It was a specialized profession. And I compare it now, to be a doctor, you still got to go to medical school. You still got to pass.
Correct.
That's to be a lawyer. You've got to go to law school. You got to pass the bar. Anybody these days, because of technology, can be a journalist or a so-called journalist. And you're right. The lines are just skewed between. I mean, I sit in some of these. I told Rob this story. We had a couple off the records with Kalen DeBoer, and I'm 60, and I remember wasn't that long ago when most of the writers were older than me, but Kirk McNair was there, and I think Kirk was maybe one other guy that was in my age range, but Kirk was the only person there older than me, and most of I hate to use the term kids, but that's kind of what they are, and they had not really sat in, I think, on an off-the-record meeting and had an understanding of what that means. Because I'm sitting there and they're asking about, the depth chart at right tackle and, questions that you can ask. So finally, after about 15 minutes, I said, Coach, since this is off the record, I would ask you an off the record question, something that we don't get every day. I was sitting there thinking, and I looked around the room and I'm thinking, man, they really don't even understand what this is. This is something that you have access to the coach and he will talk to you about. It's not for to be put out, but you can ask him stuff that you wouldn't ask him in a normal setting. They didn't even really get that. I was amazed. And then I sat there thinking, well, I hope none of them go out and report this. Because I was sitting there thinking, I don't know if some of them even understand what off the record is. Because, you guys know, used to if a coach called you over, and even if it was that SEC Media Days, he called you over, as soon as he said, hey, listen, this is off the record, that was it. You took it and you listened to it, but you knew you were never going to put that out. Now, I mean, I don't even know, that's a dangerous precedent, I think, to have off-the-record meetings these days, because I don't know that anybody understands what it means.
Johnny Vault called me a piss ant.
How about that?
Hey,
that's you know what? That's something to be proud of.
I can remember as a TV reporter, Fort Benning was my primary beat for WRBL News 3 on your side in Columbus, Georgia on 13th Street. I'm out there. I covered 3rd Ranger Battalion, 4th Ranger Training Battalion, Special Forces, the $97, Airborne, everything. I was at the School of the Americas talking to the commandant and about the drug war, going on at the time. And he said, is that camera off, Brown? I go, yes, sir. And he goes, this is off the record. I said, yes, sir. I was never going to cross that guy. But that's what the most valuable thing I learned also from the police. There may be an investigation going on with 3 suspects, and they have one of them in custody, but not the other 2. And they would come to us and say, hey, can you sit on this? We need your help. And you just have to use discretion. But I have so much respect for Franz and for you, Gary, busting your ass every day. The local reporters. Hey, we had a guy on, Ralph Russo, AP's national college football writer, a couple of weeks ago. And I couldn't let him get away without going, all right, look, a lot of our viewers go to New York a lot. Give us an off the chain, just, off the radar Italian restaurant. He goes, oh man, right in my neighborhood, Al Delito's, and he told it, only a local can do that. Gary, all right, I was talking about Alabama right now. I'm with you what Fran said. Winners win, losers lose. Kalen DeBoer, I like what I've also seen out of him. He's very calm. Cole Kubelik was at the Touchdown Club in Memphis Tuesday night. He said, man, I mean, this guy, what he goes, he really likes him. He got to talk to him last year for the Joe Moore Award, and he's just spent some time around him. You have too. I don't think he's intimidated. I think all he knows how to do is produce. Now, he's recruiting a lot of kids from out west. In state, Auburn's obviously having success, but you're still the number 2 class in the country. What about the stories? There's not as much cussing and hell raising with the coaches. It's fun, blah blah blah. It's all in the eyes of the
let me take them one at a time, Rob, because you said a lot.
I got a lot on me.
First, to his personality. If this makes any sense, I think I might have told you this last week. He's confident. You can see that. And Franz was talking about winners win, and he is that guy. But he's humble too, and he understands who he is. He's not taking this job, coming in without an understanding of what Alabama football represents and how much pressure's on him. But I do think he's the perfect guy to follow Saban because of what we just said. He's confident, yet he's not arrogant. I don't think he's trying to prove anything to anybody. He just wants an opportunity to coach football at the highest level and win a national championship. As far as the recruiting, I think, again, it comes down to relationships. And he has said this. Most of the relationships that they have right now for their staff have, West Coast in different areas of the country. I think they'll build those relationships. Just earlier this week, from right over here in Quitman, Mississippi, which is just over the state line.
On Highway 45.
Yeah, south of Meridian. They got, A.K. Deere, who some have rated as the top running back in the country. So I think they'll develop these relationships. I think they'll be fine. As far as the cursing, I don't think Coach DeBoer curses now. That does not apply to the staff. Because let me tell you, I've been out there and Kane Womack lets them fly. And, some of the staff. So it's still intense coaching. But I think for Coach DeBoer, I don't think, if he were to let one slip, I haven't heard it, but I don't think that's his style to curse. But coaches coach and coaches, use strong language. So that really hasn't changed on the practice field.
All right, Gary, you spent a little time.
What I see that he's able to do, and I've followed him for quite some time, he lets his coaches coach. He's in charge, but the great coaches let their coaches coach. Nick let his coaches coach.
Absolutely.
Coach Bryant let his coaches coach.
Yeah.
You go back to Spurrier, to Steve Spurrier did it. Urban Meyer, when he was here, did it. The great coaches coach. Then we had Ron Zook, who was like had his hair on fire. He's running over here to the linebackers. He's running over here to the tight ends. I mean, literally, he was sprinting on the football field from place to place to place. Instead of being the head coach, he was trying to be the head coach of every position. You can't be that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Gary. And again, you spend a lot of time, like I said, in Mississippi. Highway 45, that's what I call the land that time forgot. We take that when we go down to Orange Beach. Deer in the headlights. How many times are we going to hear that when he's running the ball? That guy is one of those ones you go, I'm from Mars. He's good.
He's the most high-profile recruit to come out of Quitman High School since Antonio McDyess, the basketball player. Quitman has not had a ton of top flight, and I was actually working over there in Meridian when McDyess came out. He was a special talent. So I think that's a nice pickup. I want to go back to what Fran said about Ron Zook, and you hit on something that I have seen in my years covering college football. Some of the best coaches that I've seen were assistant coaches, and I'm talking about football coaches that, as far as X's and O's and coaching guys on the field, they weren't head coaches because of what you two are talking about. To be a head coach, particularly these days, there is a CEO aspect to it. You've got to be able to manage people. You've got to be able to run an organization. I've seen great football coaches that weren't great head coaches or didn't want to be. I go back to thinking about Ken Donahue when he was with Coach Bryant, and then later went back to Tennessee with Johnny Majors. Ken Donahue didn't want to be a head coach. He wanted to be able to come in. Coach Bryant said, he'd get in at 4:35 in the morning, Coach Donohue's light was already on in his office. He was already there. Some of these guys are great football coaches, but they can't manage an organization, and that kind of sounds like was the case with Ron Zook running around trying to coach 6 different position groups. Can't do that when you're head coach. So I've seen that, and some of the head coaches that I've seen that were really successful probably weren't the best X's and O's guys, but they understood how to run an organization. I think that's a big part of what we're at today. If you can't oversee and run the big picture and deal with personalities and all the stuff off the field, then you can't be a head coach. I don't care how good a ball coach you are.
I think it's really cool, like what Fran said about Ron Zook, and Gary, you said when you study people, and what they say about Coach Bryant, he knew how to get the best out of people. He knew when to say what and what to say at the right time. Just yelling and screaming uncontrollably because you have the title as head coach ain't going to get you anywhere. I promise you. I saw it out there. It didn't like Hollywood. I do 4 or 5 days in the field on a story on Ranger School at Fort Benning. I'll never forget. I said, y'all never yell at those guys. They said, Browne, let me tell you something. These guys are getting about 3 hours of sleep a day, 1 meal a day for 62 straight days. If we yelled and screamed at them, they wouldn't listen to a thing we said. He goes, every now and then, on special occasions, we will do it. But go back, Gary, and I know you got to go do your show. And folks, catch Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, WVUA TV 23 in Tuscaloosa, Tider Insider TV. What he and Rodney Orr put out every Tuesday night and every day of the week is solid gold for Alabama, but also their message boards are incredible for college football. Gary, tell us what we don't know that we need to know about what's happening at Alabama that you think is going to be a cool story coming up. Nothing secretive, but kind of.
Yeah, that's a great question. You're right. I got to go in a minute, but let me just think for about a second that we don't know.
Who's going to be the right guard?
We know that. We're pretty much set on the offensive line other than the right tackle,
How about Wilkin Formby from Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, Wilkin's in there with Elijah Pritchett. I think that what we're going to find out quickly is that this program is in good shape, and that I think the transition is going to be a lot smoother than many new coach transitions. For one thing, the program is, has a lot of talent. I think that the spring went well, the fall camp went well, and I hate to say not miss a beat because I'm sure there are going to be a little bumps in the roads, but I think when people see the product on the field, they're going to say, wow, Alabama has not gone anywhere. Because I think there's a feeling out there that Alabama is going to slip. I think what a lot of people don't know is that I think you're going to find out that Alabama hasn't slipped. I think 10-2 is going to be the record, and whether or not it gets them in Atlanta, I don't know, but I do think it'll get them in the playoffs. So I think we'll find that out. All right, guys.
Hey guys, let me throw in one thing real quick. I am disappointed that neither one of you mentioned the fact that Quitman, Mississippi, is the home of Wyatt Emery Cooper, who just happened to be Gloria Vanderbilt's husband.
I did not know that.
How about that? And I know some good Mississippi trivia from having lived there in Meridian and Jackson. I did not know that one myself, so I learned.
Gary,
there's that old saying: you learn something new every day. Yeah. Now you can say you learned something new, and you got the rest of the day to just go through hash.
And I'll use that on people because the one I like to use now is so many people that think they're music trivia buffs don't understand that Jimmy Rogers, the singing brakeman, the father of country music, is from Meridian, Mississippi. So or grew up there. Anyway, I gotta go, guys.
Well, Gary, see you next week. Thank you.
We also got Arthur Blakeney from Quitman, who's a great jazz trumpeter. So I mean,
and that's on Highway 45, and that's the old way to Destin. Now we take that when we go down to Orange Beach down in Baldwin County. Get down there and hit that Buc-ee's in Robertsdale and get on the Foley Beach Expressway.
Didn't Buc-ee's have great barbecue? Goodness.
Buc-ee's is awesome. Are they in Florida yet?
Oh yeah. We got it over at St. Augustine, Daytona Beach. They're building the largest Buc-ee's in the world in Ocala.
Brendan is in Ocala.
Yeah, 250 gas pumps.
Good gosh. Well, I will say this. We all travel on the road a lot. Buc-ee's, it's just incredible. Hey, Buc-ee's, if you're watching, we would love to have you as a sponsor. We'll make you all your money back in about the first 5 minutes of the show. Love Buc-ee's because when you're traveling, you can go in there and get fresh fruit. fresh food, good food. And if you got your wife with you, and I've got Mildred with me, on these trips, man, they got cool stuff to buy for the
You
entire
can buy.
family.
You said where else can you get barbecue, get a Slurpee, get beef jerky, and buy a pair of flip flops, all in the same place.
And some Huckware. You can't beat it. All right, friends, wild show today. I'm going to throw some real fast bullet points at you right now. You talk about it, West Virginia, that program, and what we need to be
Zero
doing.
chance to ever be in the SEC.
No, they're not going to be in the SEC. I don't see it. No, but I'm saying West Virginia's got a medical school. Okay, it's an hour south of Pittsburgh. The backyard brawl. We need to get Penn State and Pitt playing every year. We need Virginia Tech and West Virginia playing every year. But what I see going on, and I know a lot of people, it's awful easy to get caught up in all the gloom and doom. But what I see happening, when I watched ACC Network, ACC Road Trip, and they're out in Berkeley and Stanford, say what you want, but it's cool having these cross-country. I know it's a crazy travel schedule. SMU, it has turned Dallas on fire, okay? SMU being in the ACC. I think these games, we had Chris Plank on from the Boomer Sooner Network Tuesday, or what's the day, Thursday?
It is until tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. So we had, I was on Chris Plank's show yesterday in Oak City, Norman, Bricktown. Man, those are some passionate fans out there. And the Texas fans are too. But one thing Ken Capps from Dallas, one of our regulars, Football Writers Association of America, says, he goes, Texas has only really had to get jacked up, at that super level maybe a couple of times a year. I said, well, you got Georgia coming out there. You got Florida coming out there. Mississippi State, get ready because it's the weekly grind that we have. But friends, I think college football it pulls people together. And, I watch a lot of these. I watch SEC Network a lot, ACC Network, Big Ten. They do their training camp thing. When we have all these intersectional games, friends, and I'm going to go back and forth. We're going to play tennis here with this. I think it's great for interest. Yes or no?
We got to have them, and we got to have them, and we got to eliminate we have to eliminate the Division I AA teams. Play them in the spring. I've been saying that for years.
Brilliant.
Years. Make that their paycheck game. They don't have, and here's why. Do that out of compassion for them because they can have all their injuries then, and they don't have to go play one of their league opponents the next week that may keep them out of the playoffs because they're so banged up from having played. Western Walla Walla comes to town. I mean, they know they're taking a beating. They know they're coming for the paycheck.
Yeah, they are.
Let it be in the spring.
I was with a friend in Oxford recently, a couple of weeks ago. Made a good point. Paying $20,000 for their seats in their suite. Okay, for his family of four: husband, wife, son, and daughter. He goes, they've got a road game at Wake Forest, non-conference, over in Winston-Salem. So they got 7 home games. That comes out to about $3,000 a game. And if you look at Ole Miss's schedule, Furman, Middle Tennessee, Georgia Southern, those are their first 4 games. Those are 3 home games. You're paying a lot of money, again, to go watch them play Furman, Middle Tennessee, and Georgia Southern. And they're going to dominate those games. But you know what? Those are also can be costly. How costly, when you look out of the rearview mirror, was Florida State's win last year over the University of North Alabama, the Lions, because they lost their quarterback, Jordan Travis. And in the eyes of the nation, the voters, they were less of a team. Agree or disagree?
Well, I agree with that.
It's so obvious. I mean, yeah.
You can't, this is the other problem is you Division One AA teams, this is their for a lot of them, if they're a decent team, this is their Super Bowl. And you're going to come out there and you have an unmotivated team, and across the
Yeah.
field, this is their Super Bowl. Holy cow! I mean, I remember Samford came in here, and probably the biggest reason Dan Mullen is gone, and Samford came in here and put 50 points on him. Now he scored 72, I think it was, to
Yeah.
win that ball game. But Samford scored 50 on him, and people said, this can't happen. And
Yeah.
so you've got to, we've got to get some common sense involved in football. I don't know if you saw this or not, but Mike Gundy telling his players, tell your agents to quit calling me. They can call me again in December.
All right,
That's
question
a
for
shot
you.
across the bow of every college team in the country. Because trust me, every one of them's dealing with the same thing. The only difference is Mike Gundy is so secure in his own self that he'll say it.
Yeah,
But
I
every
like
coach
it. You know, Oklahoma State, I think it is Oklahoma State this year. They're going to have a QR code on the back of their jerseys or the front of their jerseys. This is where we're going. But I tell you what, I just think it's neat for the interest of college football. UCLA, in spite of being in Los Angeles, where there's, Hollywood and all that stuff, their athletic department was, kind of circling the drain, going down. And that's why they had to join the Big Ten. Southern Cal is a private university. They've got money, but if you look at their facilities, they're nothing compared to the SEC. And I'm talking 1 through 16. That they're not. Now, what I love, though, are these games. LSU going to play Southern Cal in Las Vegas. I mean, that's not going to be a home game for Southern Cal because it's not the Coliseum.
There's going to be a lot of drunk Cajuns there.
There will be a lot of people going out there. So you look at these games. I don't understand. Florida, look, I respect what Florida's doing. They're playing Miami. They're playing UCF. Now, they're not playing FAU or FIU or USF, but watch what's going on at USF. USF is really rising. I think they got $300 million from the Florida State Legislature for their stadium. What Florida better do, and Alabama better be careful of too, don't turn your back on your in-state kids for admission. Don't just be going after that out-of-state tuition and shutting out your legacies. You're going to regret it. You're going to rue the day that you did that. Hey, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company out on the square. I'm wearing one of these Marshwear hoodies. These things are awesome. By the way, friends, 59 degrees this morning in Memphis. Beautiful weather. Look, hey, we're gonna wrap up.
Arctic. What are you talking about? That's Arctic.
Yeah, it is, and it's going to be 98, I think, Saturday. So enjoying it this morning, 59 degrees. But let me say this too about all of our sponsors, and we will get into a lot tomorrow on Friday's Roundtable. For our executive producer, Brendan Martin, Franz Beard, Gary Harris, we tried to have John Hartwell and Matt Dean. We'll do it next week. Hey, find excuses to win. We're the most blessed country in the history of the world. We most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and make great things happen, man. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, everybody.
so important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.